I've read hundreds of books from the most successful people in the world, both internally and externally, from the likes of Ray Dalio, Elon Musk, Tim Ferriss, Naval, but also to the likes of Thich Nhat Hanh, the Dalai Lama, Laird Hamilton. Energetically, spiritually, financially, I've studied a lot, literally thousands of hours, and I've noticed there's one difference between those that struggle and those that succeed over the long haul. See, those that struggle chase tactics, whereas those that create lasting success live by first principles. And in this video, I want to walk through the 10 principles that I live by that have allowed me to make over £500,000 in my first 3 to 4 years of building a coaching business. And whilst raising 2 young girls, I've got a 4 and a 1-year-old, and creating my dream life. Now, whilst I'm not as financially successful as the likes of Ray Dalio and Elon Musk, nor do I want to be, I have an insane amount of contentment and fulfillment. I've never been so happy. So to some regards, I am just as successful. In fact, I see myself as incredibly successful, both internal and external. And I say that not to boast, but I say that to give gravitas to the 10 principles that I'm about to share with you. And what I would suggest here is take one. There'll be one of these that will just land in your body, or you'll feel real resistance to it. That's the one to focus on. So let's start. If you're building a coaching business or any business, or even just living life, you've probably noticed that it's pretty hard. Life is hard at times. It's a condition of being human. As Lao Tzu says, there's a time to be ahead, there's a time to be behind. It's a condition of being a human. Now, when I first started my entrepreneurial journey, I tried to deny and push away the tough days. And I would get caught up in the content of the present moment, and I'd feel like it was my forever. And that led to longer time in the dip, longer time in the death, the valley of death, I call it, and less time at the top, because I was so attached to the contents of the present moment. That's when I read a quote from James Clear, who said, "What you do on the tough days determines what you do on the extraordinary days." And it really landed, because when times are good, when the results are coming in, it's so easy to be inspired. It's so easy to be motivated in flow. But when you're not getting the results, when times are tough and you've hit a plateau, you're not feeling that motivation, who you are in those moments is way more important than who you are in the easy moments. So when I am struggling or low motivation or low momentum, those are the times I double down. In fact, I just recorded a video on it, and I'll post it up there. Those are the times I double down and I hold in my mind that quote, "What you do on the tough days determines what you do on extraordinary days." And I'll add to this an amazing philosophy, I suppose, taken from Buddhism, which is be the ocean, not the waves. See, I would get caught in the trough of a wave for way too long, because I was caught up in thinking my reality was my final outcome, that I was forever stuck in this moment. Now, what in Buddhism they say is like detach yourself from the outcome. The root of suffering, they say, is attachment. So by detaching yourself from the outcome, you become the ocean. Now, this doesn't mean become all stoic and not have emotions. This means the emotions don't define you. There are, of course, going to be ups, there are going to be downs, but they aren't you. Like with an ocean has waves, but it's bigger than the waves. So if you're like me, so this is point number 2. If you're like me and you come from a corporate background, you've probably been conditioned that more is more. And for most of my working life, I've had that conditioned into me. At my first job, we'd almost brag about how early we got into work and how late we would start. And the goal was just to fill our calendar. The 11th verse of the Tao Te Ching slapped me around the face and really forced me to confront this belief that I had to be busy to be effective. And essentially what it says is that it's in emptiness that we become useful. It says a cup becomes useful when it's empty. And it's the same for us humans. In our emptiness, we become useful. And if you listen to the likes of Naval, he talks often about how we should work like lions, not cows. Lions are actually inherently lazy. They lie around all day, but when they hunt, they hunt. And that's how I try and live. I try and live like a sprinter, not a marathon runner. So my goal now is to have as much clear space in my calendar as possible, and not to fill my mind with busyness and thoughts, but actually to continually empty it. I once thought it was a real limitation that I didn't have a busy mind, but actually I'm seeing it as such a gift now. When we are empty, we become a vessel for the Tao, for God, the universe, whatever you want to call it. For me, the Tao. When we are empty, we become that empty vessel where we can become useful. So it's only in the emptiness that we can become useful. This is both on a practical, strategic, tangible level, like how you use your calendar, but also on an internal level. Continue to just empty your mind, empty. And in that emptiness, inspiration will flow through you. Wayne Dyer says the difference between inspiration and motivation is that motivation is where you take a project and run with it. This is how we are mostly conditioned to work, but through force. Take something, structure it, run with it. Where he says inspiration is where a project takes you and runs with it. And we only can live from a place of inspiration if we're empty, if we have space. So that is my goal now, is have as much space in my calendar and in my mind and internally. So bring me to number 3, one of the biggest tricks the mind plays on us is this idea of once I have, then I'll do, then I'll be. Once I have more money, then I'll be happier, then I'll do the thing. Once I have more confidence, then I'll start speaking up in then I'll start speaking up in meetings, and then I'll stand on stage. But of course, if we continue to wait for the having, we'll be waiting forever, because what we have is a result of who we are, our being, the level of our thoughts, the frequency at which we vibrate at, the emotions, our dominant emotions, our emotional home, and the actions we take. So it is not have, do, be, it is be, do, have. And how I implemented this in my life is I essentially, every 8 or 12 weeks, I revisit my vision and I ask myself, how would I be if I was already there? And how would I live if I was already there? And I start living that way now, before the having. Now, this doesn't mean going and being lavish with money and spending loads of money, because you can actually create the feeling of the having without that. When I ask myself, how would I be if I was already at my vision? What comes up for me is calm, relaxed, effortless. There'll be space in my calendar. And that's my goal. And as I do that, things just start coming to me because I'm vibrating at the frequency of my future self. And we attract who we are. We attract things that vibrate at that frequency. So by vibrating at that frequency, we attract things at that frequency. This is in essence the heart of manifestation. I think manifestation has been so overly complicated, so overly complicated, so you buy all the courses and you buy all the books, but it is so much easier than we make it out to be. Ask yourself every day, how would I be if I was already there? How would I be if I already had everything I wanted to? Because what will come up for you is things that you don't need money for. You can create an internal state without the things that you think you need. You can create an internal state of happiness, of joy, of calm, of ease now, just with a breath, just by going out and walking. Breathe that shizzle in. So as I was saying, bring me into number 4. So as I was saying, before. I've been conditioned very much the corporate way, where more is more, have to be doing the whole time. And I was actually rewarded for it a lot. My nickname at school was the Machine, because I'd stay behind after rugby training and train till I was sick. And I would always do extra. And it paid off. Like, I was a very good rugby player. I played semi-professional. And I was rewarded for it, both financially and in status. But in the last years, I've started to get exhausted of it. And I've realised it's a really hard mask to keep on. It's exhausting. And I also don't think we are meant to live that way at all. In fact, I think probably 7 years ago, I had a breakdown because of the ways I was living. More recently, I've gone the other way. And it all came on the back of reading this one line from the Tao Te Ching, which says, "The Tao does nothing but leaves nothing undone." Another way of saying that is, nature doesn't hurry, but it achieves everything. And we are no different from nature. If you zoom out far enough, we're the same size, right? So this is how I live now, or aim to live. Of course, I forget all the time. This is how I aim to live, with this effortless action. In the East, they call it Wu Wei, which is mean non-force or non-action. And it kind of sounds paradoxical, right? The Tao does nothing but leaves nothing undone. It sounds paradoxical. How do I do nothing but get everything done? We forget, and I suppose my biggest fear of living this way is that I'd become lazy and I'd become complacent and I just wouldn't get anything done. But we forget, much like nature, that it is in our internal operating system to grow, to evolve. You think of nature, it's constantly expanding and contracting, expanding and contracting. That's in us too. So we will never be complacent and just lazy because we have this natural flow of life that wants to flow through us. Our goal is just to be empty and be connected to the Tao, the God, be guided by that, because that wants to flow through us. And we can only get there if we stop forcing. So my goal now is to really just be guided by the Tao, to be connected to the Tao, to be connected to the source of who I am, and to entrust my actions in that. I work hard, I move fast, I take a lot of action, but there's a different energy behind it. There's no force. It's effortless. Like this YouTube, this was totally effortless to me. I'm out for a walk. I was inspired to talk about this morning. I wrote some notes on my phone. There's no effort here, but I'm still getting a lot done. That is the way of the Tao. Breathe that shizzle in. So number 5, again, a lot of this goes against the conditioning of how we are trained to live. And one thing that I've really had to learn is this overemphasis that we've put on our cognition, on our mind, on our brain. Now, our brain is, of course, wildly powerful, and you can't disconnect it from the body, but I'm just going to do it for simplification. But we have been rewarded for our cognition by remembering the times table and all that bollocks. And in doing so, we've been really disconnected from the most powerful resource we have, and that is our body. And that I remember watching a video by a guy called Dr. Alan Watkins called Being Brilliant Every Day. It's his TED Talk. And that changed my life because it really reminded me of the power of the body, and it all starts with the body. Now, I'd recommend going and watching that. But since watching that video, I now entrust my body. My body is the greatest tool for awareness and change. And on the awareness side, I essentially use my emotions, my feelings as a barometer for the quality of my thinking. And I don't know the exact numbers, but for every emotion, we think like 2,000 thoughts. So it's far easier to go to the emotion, go to the feeling and change that than it is to change the thoughts. So when I'm feeling tight, restricted, stressed, and I notice that, I will not spend time trying to manipulate my thoughts or control my thoughts. I will just go with my body. I use my emotions as a barometer for the quality of my thinking. So if I'm feeling that tight, stressed and what have you, I will notice my thoughts and I'll just do the opposite. So for me, when I'm feeling stressed, my thoughts are often telling me I need to work harder. And I implicitly trust my body and what I'm sharing with you way more than trying to control my thoughts. So I simply do the opposite. That often means downing my tools, getting outside, sometimes just sitting on the balcony and breathing for 5 minutes, or just dancing. I lead with my body and my mind follows. And in doing that, it always does. So this has been a huge unlock for me. So I really hope this isn't too windy. Number 6. So for most of my life, I have struggled with food, binge eating, overeating, and then aggressive fasting. And it's only recently where I felt like a really good place with my food. And the big shift has come from radical honesty. There's a quote again that really landed in me. It says, all growth starts with telling the truth. Now, I am, like every other human on this planet, very good at telling myself lies, particularly when it comes to food. I'll give you an example. So most mornings when I make my daughter's peanut butter sandwich, I lick the knife afterwards, and peanut butter is my biggest vice. I think I'm slightly allergic because I don't feel great after it. I lick the knife and go, I'll just do that today. And of course, I know I'm not just going to have that. So I find myself with a spoon in hand and more peanut butter in my mouth. A couple of hours after, I say, the last spoon. And of course, 5 spoons later and half the jar gone. Well, I was lying to myself all along. So now what I've started to do instead is to say the radical truth. I'm really committed to making myself feel like shit with this peanut butter. No problem. And paradoxically, what happens is change becomes easier, because what happens when we start telling ourselves the truth, we release vitality and energy. We stop the pendulum that we're fighting against, and we quash it with just radical truth. And we unlock energy for change. So all growth starts with telling the truth. So number 7. So a couple of years ago, I really wanted to give up building a coaching business. And I remember leaving a voice note to my friend Lawrence, sharing exactly that. And he said something really powerful to me. He said, Joel, you've been here before and you'll be here again, but you always find a way. And he was right. I always find a way. But something also had to change. And the way I was operating till that point wasn't working. So I had to do something radically different. So this time, instead of taking action, I sat in stillness for 20 minutes and I asked for guidance. I emptied myself like an empty cup and I became useful, but I asked for guidance. And what came through for me was building a community. And I went on after that to build the Modern Man membership, which really solved all of my financial and business challenges at that time. But what I realized in that is that our power is always in the present moment. If you are ever struggling or caught up in a problem or a challenge, it is not the problem or the challenge, it's because you're disconnected from the present moment. We have everything we need in this present moment. That may be hard to believe, especially if you're struggling right now, but I assure you, a little bit of silence, some emptiness, some breathing, and a lot of listening, answers will come through. Whenever I feel stuck, I don't try and think my way there. I will move and I'll sit in stillness and I'll ask for guidance. And what comes through is always clear, tangible actions. Sometimes it's not, doesn't fully make sense, but I trust what comes through. And I've realized time and time again now that our power lives in the present moment. So that is number 7. Number 8 is a really simple one. I used to struggle with consistency massively. I used to be insanely inconsistent. I would have months of, being, all in it, and then months where I'd just be a fat slob. I am incredibly consistent now. It's probably my greatest strength, discipline and consistency. And I owe a lot of it down to this one principle: never twice in a row. It's so simple, because we are all going to slip up. We will all make mistakes. We will all overeat, overdrink, whatever it is, whatever the unwanted habit is for you. We'll always do it. But if you do it 2 days in a row, 3 days in a row, 4 days in a row, then it becomes a habit. And that then builds inertia, builds momentum, which then becomes harder to break. But by just saying never twice in a row, it gives ourselves grace and compassion, but allows ourselves, but it also gets us back on track as soon as possible. So a very, very simple one: never twice in a row. So number 9, with inconsistency, I've also, for many years, struggled with my morning routine, especially waking up early. Even though I really, really desired waking up early. I saw all these very successful people waking up at 5 a.m. and I always had that desire, but I struggled with it for years. Now, for the last 8, maybe 9 years, I've woken up at 4:35 a.m. probably 90% of the days in a week, maybe 95. And what I owe it to is not trying to do it through willpower, because willpower doesn't work. Benjamin Hardy has a great book called Willpower Doesn't Work. And ever since reading it, what I've started to do is I outsource my willpower to external defense mechanisms. So my morning routine, my morning alarm, I use an app called Alarmy. So I have to solve 5 maths equations to switch it off. So by the time I've done that, I'm wide awake and I might as well wake up. That's a great way of outsourcing your willpower, because willpower doesn't work, especially when you're tired, 4:30, 5 a.m. in the morning, especially when you've had a long day. I'm going to get wet very soon. There is a big cloud coming in, so I'll finish this up. Number 10, and I'll keep this quick, is another quote from James Clear. He says, "We don't rise to the level of our goals, we fall to the level of our systems." Systems are everything. And there are probably 4 systems that I think are absolutely essential in building a really successful life internally and externally. The most important is a nervous system, a strong nervous system. Think of your nervous system like a battery. We can train it. We can train it to get bigger, so we can hold more energy, we can hold more capacity. But also, our nervous system, we need to master regulating it, so we can quickly come back to a calm, present and regulated state. Because remember, the power is in the present moment, and when we're dysregulated, we can never be present. Productivity systems, marketing and sales systems, and delivery systems. Now, as a side note, if you want us to build your marketing systems so you can focus on delivery and sales, then message me on Instagram 333, because I'm an angel. And I'll send over details. We jump on a call, see if it's fit. But I hope this has been useful. Drop in the comments which one of these resonated the most. I'd love to hear from you, and go ahead and give me a subscribe. It really helps my channel out, and I am going to get super wet soon. Let me show you the size of this. Look at that. It doesn't really show up in camera. That is a big fucking cloud, and I am going to get wet very, very soon. Sending you so much love. Have a great day.